Erica,
Yes.
could you please start over? You were talking to him, but we weren't recording.
It's okay.
That's okay.
It's okay. We haven't started the meeting yet. I guess we can start the meeting now. Sorry, we're now recording. So let's see. It looks like we have
We need to know as much as anything.
we have Steve Ruby, Sophia Kassam from Community Development, Dale Roundy, Planning Commissioner, Adam Zach from Community Development. Looks like we have Lovell Pratt as a guest. And then we have two phone numbers. Phone number 206-910-3343. Would you unmute yourself and let us know who you are if you're a planning commissioner or a guest?
That's Mike Pickett.
Thank you, Mike.
You should be there.
And then we have phone number 360-376-7200. Would you unmute yourself and let us know if you're a planning commissioner or a guest?
Yeah, this is Tim Blanchard.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, so it sounds like we've got 1, 2, 4, 5 planning commissioners, including Camille, who is here in the hearing room with us. So Camille, would you like to start the meeting?
I am muted on my phone.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, because it shows he's on mine, so I don't know.
Are they going to help us with it?
You want to try again, Camille?
This is
Yeah.
It shows on. There's 3 people.
Oh, right. It does. Does it look like?
Hey, Nathan, look at mine.
Could everybody on the call mute? Oh, it's that one?
That happens if I turn on my microphone here also, but I don't have it on right now. So it looks like these 2 are open, isn't that right? Because they would have the slash if they're muted.
Yeah, and the little lines they're actually putting outside.
Okay. Please,
It's
Michael, it still shows your phone's open, and Tim, your phone's still open. They can hear me, right? You said?
I can hear you, but can you? So I'm gonna. My phone was muted. It showed it was muted. I'm gonna mute it right now, and I'm gonna talk, and you tell me if you hear me.
Okay. See, whatever they're doing, it gets little marks on it, but it's not actually getting a line through it.
So I muted myself and I talked.
yes. It could be. Do you have your computer on to the live stream?
I do. Yeah.
Make sure your computer is muted. If you're.
It is.
Oh, okay.
My speakers, anyway. I'll just get out of the live stream. As much as I'd like to see Camille, I'll pass on.
It's okay. It just is. Are you also on the phone?
I am.
So usually if you're on the phone, use that for talking and make sure your computer is muted. That's what causes the feedback issue. You just watch
Right.
the live stream and listen through the phone.
Right. I'll work on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Shall we try it again? No.
Nathan?
All right, I just dropped out of the live stream, so if it was me, it should be better.
Okay.
Right here.
Now,
Try a different
Is-
light.
we could, yeah, try a different mic.
All right, now let's try it.
Hello?
Let's try that one again.
Well, this is the one, the
Well-
naughty one.
Let's try that one again now.
Try it again.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it
That
was-
was what
Oh,
that-
good.
It was the Skype computers. It
Ah,
was one. The others with the planning commissioners, that's something evidently we're not going to be able
Okay.
to figure out.
so it sounds like we have our issue resolved, and Camille can
We're ready to go.
start the meeting.
Let's try again. Confirming the agenda for today's meeting, are there any requests to change the agenda as it's proposed?
Go through one.
Do any commissioners have time constraints?
You need to ask them individually, remember?
Tim Blanchard,
No.
Mike Pickett,
Just dinner.
Dale Randy, Steve Ruby. Sounds like, okay. Let's have a motion to approve or amend the minutes of the March 20th meeting. Tim Blanchard,
Are you looking for a motion or are we voting?
Looking for them.
looking for a motion.
Okay, I'll move we approve the minutes for the March 20, 2020 Planning Commission meeting as presented.
Is there a second?
You'll have to ask them.
Dale Randy, Mike Pickett,
Sure, I'll second it. Mike Pickett.
thank you. All those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of March 20th, 2020, I'll call the roll. Tim Blanchard,
Yes.
Mike Pickett,
Yes.
Dale Randy,
Dale, are you there?
Steve Ruby,
Yes.
Camille Euler votes yes. The motion passes as. All right, let's begin with a staff update from Erica Shook, Director.
So, good morning, everybody. We sent out the vacation rental annual report, so you've all seen that. It's as of April 30th, the report we sent out. I believe it's been sent out to all planning commissioners. So you can see the number of vacation rentals we have that were sort of in compliance versus the number of permits we actually have. We cleaned up our data quite a bit. So originally we had a little over 1,118 vacation rental permits. We found some of those were bed and breakfasts, farm stays, and then we had about 100 permits that folks abandoned. So we were down to I don't have it in front of me, so we were down to under 1,000 vacation rental permits. And then in 2019, when we went through all the compliance certificates, we actually have about 630 or so vacation rentals that are in compliance, and we have about a little over 300 that we were going to have to do enforcement on, folks that have not responded in either 2018 or 2019, and some that responded in 2018, but not in 2019. So folks that didn't respond at all will be starting the process to revoke permits, and then folks who just missed this last year will get a reminder. We think that most of those are inactive. So if you've got any questions about the report, I'm happy to answer that. Our next bit of news is that Linda Culler, our planning manager, has retired. So And because we've got budget issues, we are likely going to be spreading her work amongst the remaining staff. So I'll probably be taking over most of the Planning Commission long-range things along with Adam and Sophia. So we haven't seen a real dip in building permits. Our volumes are a little bit lower than they were last year, but we're still seeing quite a bit of building activity despite the pandemic. So that's my update for today. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
This is Tim. I have a question, and that is, when was that report sent? Because something may have slipped through the cracks.
It was probably early June. We're happy to send it out again if it didn't get sent out. So.
And my system, a system may have eaten it, but I actually haven't seen it.
Okay.
So if you would, thanks so much.
I will be happy to send it out.
This is Mike. I didn't get it either. Please send it again. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. I will be happy to send it again. Okay. Any other questions? No.
Hearing none.
Oh, it looks like Mike is speaking but muted maybe.
No, I'm not speaking.
Oh,
I will.
okay. No. It's
I'd be happy. I think we should congratulate Linda Culler on her decision, and I'll bless the rest of you for taking it all up. But
yes.
Congratulations, Linda. Bye.
Yeah, she has worked very hard for the county and been just a really fantastic contributor, keeping us, her accomplishments are large. The SMP, she's got the marijuana ordinance and regulations to a place where we can have a hearing on it. Just a huge amount of work. So we're very grateful that she was here, and happy for her and not happy for us.
This is Tim. I certainly agree with that completely. My question is, though, given the need to not have meetings and the staffing issues that you just described, what does that mean for us in terms of timing and efforts to complete in a thoughtful manner the comp plan update?
A comp plan update is still going to remain a priority for us. I expect that the next two meetings might be a little bit rough, I guess, while we kind of figure out what we still need to do. Really, the last big piece is the land use element, and we have been doing quite a lot of work on that. So most of the other elements have significant amount of work that's been completed. We're thinking that we will be having less public participation, just given the pandemic. We might have to find other ways of participating, and we're thinking that we'll be working with the Planning Commission on the drafts, and after we've got a draft document together, we would be out or somehow getting public comments on that. But we do anticipate that we'll start working on land use next month, and we've done a lot of work to get us to the land use portion of the comp plan. In fact, the last 2 months without having meetings, there was a lot of progress made. So we think we're still okay. We're going to be moving work around so that I will be offloading some of my other work to other folks so that we can keep the momentum going.
Thank you, Erica. Linda, excuse me, will the minutes reflect the commendation of Linda Culler's input too? Thank you. Mm-hmm. Next.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Steve Ruby, I noticed you're muted on one hand and open on the other. Could you mute both, please? You have two microphones. One's muted and one's open.
I don't think.
I think he is muted.
So he's just,
I see. You can come look at my screen if you'd like.
Oh, I
Either
see.
One of you. There's
Yeah.
two of them up there. One of them's muted, one isn't.
Excuse me, this is Dale Roundy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
yes,
Yes to what?
we can hear you.
You're here, Dale, right?
Yes.
Thank you. I finally saw the button to push to unmute myself, but I don't see two microphones. I see one.
No, it's Steve Ruby, not Dale.
So it's okay. We're not getting feedback.
That's fine. I just noticed it just came up, so just checking. Madam Chair, would you ask Dale if he would like to say that he also approves the minutes from March 20th, since we know he was there, but we couldn't hear him.
Dale, would you give us your motion for approval or disapproval of the March 20th minute?
Just a yes or no.
So yes, first of all, I second the motion, and then Mike seconded it. But I will withdraw my second and vote in favor of the approval of the minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Erica. Mr.
I
you
don't.
have anything
I have
else?
nothing else. No.
Okay, and so we move to public access time. And who has the phone numbers of anybody wishing to comment?
Looks like Lovell Pratt is the only member of the public.
Okay, Lovell, do you have some comment at this time?
I do, if that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks very much. Good morning, planning commissioners and staff. Thanks for persevering through the challenges of an online meeting. So I'm Lovell Pratt. I'm with Friends of the San Juans, and we submitted comments that you probably haven't received because they were submitted yesterday. But I just wanted to go through some of those with you if I could this morning. Most of our comments focus on environmental and natural resource protection and climate change issues. In both the utilities and the capital facilities and services elements, we just want to emphasize the importance that the planning and permitting for these essential facilities also include protection of natural resources and consideration of a changing climate. And in the utilities element on page 9, lines 2 through 6, we ask that you retain policy number 1, which is currently in strikeout. And then also in the utilities element, goal 9 is about propane. And we ask that a goal specific to propane also include goals and policies for transitioning from this non-renewable fuel. And, you know, there's some very active citizens in transition groups. You know, there's a Transition Lopez, a Transition San Juan, and they could probably help with language on this. And we support the Planning Commission's request for a policy related to safe transport and storage of propane, and just ask that the staff draft of that policy or that goal be would have the addition that ensures the safety of human and natural communities at the end of their language there. In the section 7.3a with solid waste and recycling services, it seems that we really need to have policies and goals that talk about increasing recycling, reuse, composting, et cetera. And, you know, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee would be great to task for that. And under, in the introduction and vision section, the governance section, we're suggesting an additional sentence: planning for capital investments and needed services includes the protection of natural resources. And under the economy section on page 8, we suggest an additional sentence: we plan for and provide services to tourists and part-time residents without impacting the availability of affordable housing essential services, and water resources for our year-round residents or the environment. On page 11, the current draft says that the plan is implemented by various parties throughout the county. And we think it's important that this plan has ownership, that the San Juan County Council has ownership and responsibility for this plan. So we're suggesting be included in the 2 sentences. The county has the responsibility of planning for growth management. The San Juan County Council is primarily responsible for the implementation of the plan. And then on page 15, line 30, there's a section titled Rural Character. And we're suggesting that this be changed to say Rural Character and Environmental Protection. You know, this subsection relates to the tension between growth and development pressures and the health of the underlying natural ecosystems. And this is, you know, this is the foundation of our economy and sense of place, and it's not covered anywhere else, any other element in the comprehensive plan. So we just feel like it's important to really address that because it really gets at the heart of, you know, who we are as a community and the values that we have and the beauty of the environment here and the rural character here and the natural resources that support our quality of life. So we have some suggested language there. And then finally, just to say that, you know, this comprehensive plan update process has been going on for years. And one of the comments we have goes back to a letter dated October 18, 2017 that the county received from the Islands Climate Resilience Group that had a number of great recommendations that related to climate change issues. And I can imagine, I mean, I can imagine that, you know, those comments received then are kind of lost in the, you know, process because it's been so long. The other letter to the county that we referenced is the December 18, 2019 letter to the county council from the vacation rental work group, which we recommend for additional policies and goals. And it seems that, you know, that's really an important issue to address in the comprehensive plan update. And there's, you know, there's quite a bit of, you know, there's great language in that letter, and I'm sure that group would be happy to help with language to address policies and goals around vacation rental issues. So thank you very much, and thank you for all your work on this. And it's good to hear Erica say that the comp plan update is still a priority for the county. Thanks so much.
Erica,
Do I just on 6 again?
This is, excuse me. You need to ask if there's anybody else. I noticed there's an S. Bernheim now that would not like to speak.
Yeah. Anybody else requesting public access, please acknowledge themselves and give us your name, please.
Bernheim, I don't have the phone number. I just have.
Is there a Mr. Bernheim on the line?
Yes, he is on the line. Thank you. I just wanted to mention, first of all, that I live on Orcas Island, and I'm actually, I wanted to mention there's quite a delay between the live stream and the phone. I'm sure you're aware of that. The other thing is the 2020 vacation rental report. I have not seen that available publicly, and I note that no one on the commission indicated that they had seen it either. Is this, I would like to, I know this isn't a question and answer time, but it would be nice to have that published. I haven't seen that anywhere either in the media or released by the county. Thank you.
I'm happy to, if you send if you send me an email, I'm happy to send you some links. My email is Erikas, ERIKAS, at sanjuanco.com. But I will.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is published, but I can probably do a better job of getting it out there.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Steve, did you have other comments?
Nope. Fine, yeah. Madam Chair, I do have one comment to make. This is Linda Guernsey, clerk for the Planning Commission. Georgette Wong has officially resigned from the Planning Commission. I don't know who knew and who didn't know, but that's the way it is at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I believe she told Rick Hughes, or maybe sent a letter to Mr. Hughes. Mm-hmm. Is there anyone else requesting public access time? If not, we'll close public access time and move on to the briefings. The first briefing is the 2020 annual docket, proposed amendments to the San Juan County Development Regulations and Comprehensive Plan, and Sophia Kassem is presenting.
Hello, I am just getting the presentation up, or trying to figure out how to get it to present to you all. Just a moment, hang in there with me. Do you all see the presentation view or the presenter view?
Sophia, I've got it on mine. It's, I don't know why it's not showing on the projector screen though.
Showing on this screen.
Yeah.
Here.
Hey Adam, could I get some tech support? Please?
Nathan, a call. It was almost there.
Oh, hold on a second. It's the
And there's the sidebar too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, it's up.
It is up?
Don't you want it to be a single page, not the multiple pages on the side?
I can't do that.
Oh, it has to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
Are you seeing the presentation or the presenter set up with the?
We are seeing the presentation.
Excellent. Okay. Hi, Planning Commission. It's good to be with you again after these last few months. This is the initial briefing of the 2020 annual docket. The purpose of this presentation is to provide you with an initial overview of the 2020 requests and staff's recommendations prior to the Planning Commission public hearing, which is going to be on July 17th. First, I'll provide you with the background on what the docket is. Then we will take a look at this year's requests, and I'll explain DCD's recommendations. And then finally, I'll go over next steps in the docket process. And I'd love to take your questions at the end of the briefing, if that's all right with you. So, what is the annual docket? It is a list of text amendments to the comp plan and to the Unified Development Code, or UDC, and to the official comp plan maps. The requests that are approved get put on the future Department of Community Development work plan. And we do this for a few reasons. First of all, the county is required by the GMA to allow anyone who's interested to request these amendments once per year. The deadline this year was March 1st. And yeah, well, that's one of many reasons. Another reason we do it is to just see what the public needs us to give attention to in the comp plan or the code. So this year we received 7 docket requests. You'll find this table in the staff report, and there's a more in-depth summary table in attachment A. The requests themselves are in attachment B if you're interested in seeing them in their entirety. And I'll briefly walk through the requests and our recommendations. So our first request was from the Deer Harbor Planning and Review Committee, And they requested that we remove the community center overlay district from the Deer Harbor plan to eliminate existing roadblocks to the development of small business activities in the hamlet. They also requested that we amend various parts of the Deer Harbor UDC land use tables to encourage the development of small businesses and affordable housing, and to provide or to preserve the sense of community and conserve natural resources there. And finally, they requested that we add the language "and its environs" to the designated area of oversight for Deer Harbor Planning and Review Committee, because due to Deer Harbor's geography, any activities occurring in the area around the hamlet inherently affect the hamlet. So staff recommends incorporating requests 1 and 2 in the comp plan update. We met with Deer Harbor Planning and Review Committee to discuss what these requests would look like, and they fit in nicely with the work that we are already doing for the comp plan update. Request number 3 has already been addressed by Erica. The committee looks at and comments on the permit applications in its area of oversight. So rather than adding "and its environs" to the committee's defined area, Erica showed the committee how to search for permits within that area so that they can do so on their own. Our second request was from Homes for Islanders. And actually, they had 4 requests within their application, and those were related to affordable housing and rural residential cluster developments in the Unified Development Code. They asked that we delete SJCC 18 to 30 C3B, which limits cluster developments to only one of the 4 methods of assuring affordability that are listed in the Affordable Housing Code. They also asked that we implement the 2009 Housing Element Policy, allowing 12 dwelling units in a rural residential cluster development rather than the 8 that are currently allowed by the code. They requested that we increase the floor area limitations for dwelling units in cluster developments to 1,750 square feet in order to allow for more bedrooms to accommodate larger families. And then finally, they asked that we allow more middle income affordable housing units by deleting SJCC 1860-60G. This code limits the percent of units in a housing development that can be counted as affordable when they're for middle income households, when the developer is taking advantage of affordable housing privileges, like, for example, density bonuses. So we got feedback on these from Ryan Page, the Affordable Housing Coordinator. And after talking with him, we do recommend considering all of these requests as part of the comprehensive plan update. They are part of a larger discussion about affordable housing policies and code changes that we like to have with Council and Planning Commission at a later date as part of the plan update. So I expect we'll be discussing these together again in greater depth soon. The third request was from Janet Alderton. She asked that we remove certain language in the draft transportation element about exploring Lopez and Orcas as potential international ports of entry. The applicant was concerned that the policies in the draft transportation element could lead to unnecessary spending and over tourism. And so we forwarded this request to Public Works because Public Works is currently working on the draft transportation element. So it's being considered in the update of that element. The fourth request was from John Campbell. He asked that we amend the definition of affordable housing in the Affordable Housing Development Standards to read as follows. Affordable housing is housing where the occupants pay no more than 30% of gross monthly income for rent or mortgage, he proposed that we strike out the other costs that were in that definition that were wrapped up in that 30% kind of quota. So John Campbell's stated intent behind this change is to simplify the affordable housing application process and to rectify some apparent discrepancies between the San Juan County Code 1860-260 definition of affordable housing and how it's defined in the Growth Management Act. We talked this one over with Ryan Page as well, and we recommend analyzing amendment of the affordable housing definition and the development standards. During the comp plan update, Ryan suggested making the affordable housing definition throughout the plan and the UDC consistent with the definition of affordable housing in the Affordable Housing Program Code, which is SJCC 1827030. That definition includes in the 30% quota mortgage, property taxes, and insurance for owners, and rent and utilities for renters. The fifth request is from a group of Orcas Island residents: Jen Alderton, Anne-Marie Shanks, Toby Cooper, Eleanor Hogue, Jan Ehrlichman, Michael Johnson, Gregory Oakson, Mark Mayer, Judy Scott, and Arthur Cass. And this request was really similar to request number 3 about removing text in the transportation element about exploring Lopez and Orcas as potential international ports of entry. So like request number 3, we forwarded this request to Public Works because they're working on the transportation element right now. And the request is being considered as a public comment. The 6th request was from Jennifer DeGroot. And Jennifer asked that we add coastal cutthroat trout to the list of species of local importance under SJCC 1835-115, which is the fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas, types of fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas. And we recommend considering this during the critical areas update to follow the comp plan update. This request was also submitted in 2018, and at that time council had decided that the request should be added to our work plan after the comp plan update. Our code specifies specific criteria for nominating a species of local importance, which the applicant has submitted already. One thing to note, in the staff report, I had said that to meet the nomination criteria, the applicant still needs to submit a map showing the known locations of the species. And after emailing with Jennifer and looking at some of the supplemental materials that she had submitted, it looks like she does fulfill the criteria for the map requirement for when the time comes for looking at this again during the critical areas update. And our final request was from your very own San Juan County Department of Community Development. There are 2 scrivener's errors that were found in the Friday Harbor urban growth area in the plan official maps. These need to be corrected. By doing so, we will resolve inconsistencies with Ordinance 47/2007, which set the Friday Harbor UGA boundaries back in 2007. If you look in the staff report, you can see the specific parcels that we are noting. And we recommend making these 2 official map corrections during the plan update. So those are all of the 2020 docket requests. In summary, we recommend considering 4 of these during the plan update, considering 2 of them as public comments, and considering 1 during the critical areas update after the plan update. So next steps, I will be briefing council on this next week on Tuesday, and then we will hold the Planning Commission public hearing on July 17th. I'll brief council on your recommendation. And then there will be a council public hearing where they adopt the 2020 docket. So that is all. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Tim Blanchard.
No, I don't have any questions. I thought the report was very straightforward and comprehensive, and your presentation this morning as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, nothing to add. Thanks.
Dale Randy.
Nothing to add or question.
Ruby.
Yes. This may be something that you'll get into later on, but I was kind of wondering under the second docket request from Homes for Islanders, I'd really like to know what the definition of rural residential clusters are.
They are, well, I could read it from the code if you like. Would that be helpful?
Sure.
Okay, one moment. Just need to pull it up. So that is in 1860 to 33. 60 to 30. See. Sorry. Let's see here. Okay, so a rural residential cluster development is a small cluster of residences and related structures intended to provide opportunities for affordable housing and small-scale agriculture in rural areas. Well, that's the purpose statement in our rural residential cluster development code. Does that help?
Well, I was just sort of like wondering, we have zoning, so if something is, say, zoned R10, that's sort of like one residence in that 10-acre piece. Does that mean that you could change that and put a cluster in there of a number of structures?
Erica, would you answer this?
Yes, I can help you with this. So the rural cluster subdivisions allow a density bonus where they are allowed. And I believe it's one dwelling unit per 2.5 acres. And it's allowed in a variety of different land use designations or densities. So in return for this density bonus that we give, the homes are required to remain affordable. There are some issues, and I think we've pointed this out in the past. We also talked about it, and it's been on our agenda for a while. The rural cluster subdivisions are very, there's a couple of different places where they're very limited. They are limited by who can do them. And then there's a variety of number of lots and number of developments per island over time. And we feel that a lot of the regulations, and I think Homes for Islanders pointing this out too, are a little bit too strict because we found that we're not seeing very much in the way of rural cluster affordable housing being built. And one of the key issues we found was that these rural cluster subdivisions can only be developed by a nonprofit that develops affordable housing. So it's not available for developers who might want, who might have the ability to also do some affordable housing. So as part of the housing element, we should be looking at those regulations, and we'll put that on our agenda or as a discussion item for the housing element, and then implementing regulations for the comp plan. Does that help?
Well, yeah, to a certain point. I guess I need to know more in the future about how do you qualify? I mean, how does a nonprofit qualify to pursue this kind of development?
We can go over that at the next meeting if you'd like, if the planning commissioners would like to give us your questions or the things we would like to talk about as part of this discussion item, we can provide that information. So we'll talk about how do you qualify.
Okay, great.
Any other questions that we can bring information back for?
No.
So, okay.
Our potential
Thank
site
you.
on the county map.
Potential sites are not on the county map. They are based on, there's a size standard and a designation. They can only happen in certain designations and on certain size parcels.
Okay. Are there any other follow-up questions? Go through the roll call for just a
I think they're.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Not hearing any. Thank you, Sophia. I think you're going to be up next again. The next briefing is about the San Juan County Comprehensive Plan 2036 Update Project. And again, Sophia Casson will be presenting.
Alrighty. This one I don't have a PowerPoint for because it's rather short. This is section A, the introduction and vision. And I'll brief you on what we've done with it and then collect your comments, edits, or additions at the end. The vision in this was already adopted by Council in 2018, so today I'm really looking to gather feedback on the other introductory language in this section. So we're proposing to repeal and replace this section because the existing one has quite a lot of out-of-date information, and it has an all-new revised vision. It was full of information that could be found elsewhere in the comprehensive plan, and it also required just extensive changes to make it more readable, clear, and engaging. The purpose of Section A is to present the community's vision for the future, to explain the plan's purpose, its development, its contents, and how it's implemented. And then also it's meant to orient users to the unique San Juan County context that we are operating in. Section A contains a new introduction statement. It also includes the revised vision adopted in 2018. Then there's a framework section explaining why planning is important and how the public's involvement has shaped the plan. There's a section outlining what the comp plan is, what it contains, how it's implemented. Then after that, there's a county profile section that introduces San Juan County's population and the islands as a place. These are meant to provide context for the plan and identify both who we're planning for and what we're planning for. And then finally, Section A summarizes 5 key overarching challenges that are prevalent throughout the plan. These are housing, economic diversification, tourism management, rural character, and climate resiliency. And also, it's full of wonderful photos that the San Juan Visitors Bureau was willing to share with us, so we thank them. We did receive comments last night from the Friends of the San Juans, as Lovell Pratt mentioned earlier, but we haven't had the chance to review these. I will be sharing those with you, though. So with that, if you have had a chance to review Section A, I'd love to take your feedback or questions.
So, Tim Blanchard, shall we begin with you? Any suggested revisions and additions?
I have a couple of questions. I mean, obviously, we will need to review the comments from the Friends. Many, if not most of those comments made sense to me in general based on my review of of the section of the introduction section. But at least one of them, I think, not having read it, does cause me some concern. But let me ask a few questions first. Fundamentally, it looks like this introductory section, in many cases, restates the vision statement itself. In most cases, and I didn't try to go back and check every word, it looks as though it essentially reprints, although in a different format with the photos, the statements in the vision statement. Is that correct? I mean, is the text entirely from the vision statement?
So the section titled 2036 Vision that is up on my screen right now is the vision word for word, just with photos.
Okay, so that's page 6 through, because I'm not on the screen, page 6 through 9?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so I guess that makes sense, but no, I don't have a problem with the vision because we worked very hard on the vision and put that in place. Why aren't we just referring to the vision?
Well, we wanted to have a copy of the vision in the introduction. If you take a look at other county introduction sections, they also include the vision. I'm not sure if it's a requirement by the GMA, but or Erica, do you know?
It's not a requirement, but what we're trying to do is start putting all the pieces together. So we do think that the vision is it's the guiding principle behind the comprehensive plan, and everything should be flowing from it. So it probably should be in the comprehensive plan.
Oh no, I agree. But my concern is that by breaking things up in this manner, I think it feels like, anyway, it loses some cohesiveness. And because we worked, and my concern about that is we worked very hard to get things in there so that we weren't, well, I don't know. It may not be a problem at all. It just struck me as, well, as almost as a different cut at what we had worked on and tried to get nailed down. I don't know. It also seems that on page 10, we include these word clouds, and I don't think word clouds have any place in a document like this. That's just my personal view, because word clouds are just, well, they don't have the benefit. They shouldn't be in the plan because they haven't been vetted, they haven't been voted on. They're just data from the process, and they're data that's highly questionable anyway, given the process for the creation of word clouds. So I wouldn't do it. But anyway, that's just a comment in general on word clouds in a document that's supposed to guide us through the future. I had a similar question. To on page 11 to what I believe, since I haven't read it in writing, but what I believe I heard Ms. Pratt say this morning, that we certainly do need to make sure that it's clear to anybody reading the plan that the responsibility for implementation lies with the county council. I think that's definitely true. I don't think the language in the implement. I think it's helpful to let folks know that there's a lot of moving pieces and various departments are involved in the plan, but I do think it should tie back and make clear that the buck stops with the county council and it has responsibility for making that happen. So I would reinforce that. The question I had was, I believe that one of the comments related to page 11, and I think was focused on the rural character key challenge. I think we've got the right key challenges here. I had some questions on that paragraph again, which begins at page 30, or line 30 on page 15. I, however, do not think it's appropriate to mix together the concept of protecting rural character with the concept of protecting our natural environment. I think that would operate in practice to dilute protection for rural character, which is something the county has, I think, I don't know why, but has ignored its obligation to protect rural character for years, and we're seeing adverse results of it all the time. I would note that I don't think the natural environment's received short shrift in any way in the vision process. There's actually a separate section in the vision statement regarding natural environment, whereas the rural character notes are essentially throughout in various places. The environment comes up in various places as well, and you'll recall, or folks may recall, in our process regarding discussion of the vision statement, we spent a lot of time weeding out a few areas where we'd already said that, and that we didn't need to say that again because it was already part of the vision, already stated in the vision in other places. So again, I haven't read Friend's comments, but my reaction is that we shouldn't be diluting protection for rural character. That's a general comment. Now, in this draft, I object to, I think, to the sentence that begins, rural character is defined, because we don't say where, and we haven't had a process in San Juan County of defining what rural character means here. It's a process that's been avoided or ignored or thwarted. I'm not sure what the right verb for it is, for as long as I've been commenting to the Planning Commission or service on the Planning Commission. So absent a community-defined, adopted definition of what we mean by it, I think we continue to have a problem in this case. I note also at line 34, we appear to conflate some of these issues as well. It states there, the county can face the challenge of preserving natural beauty, open space, natural resources, wildlife habitat, quality of living while accommodating necessary development. Those are concepts that have a relationship to rural character, but this seems to imply that they are the defining factors of rural character, and I see numerous important elements of rural character that aren't mentioned here at all, because again, we haven't done that. So I want to just put down a marker that we've got to have a discussion about what that means, what character means, and not lump these things together. In fact, the inclusion of that sentence here makes me really wonder well, I don't know. It makes me wonder what's going on. That, coupled with the friend's comment, sounds to me as though the desire is to water down protection of rural character and just roll it in as part of natural environment. And I will oppose that strongly.
Erica,
so I'll yield at this point. Sorry, it's hard when you're on the phone. So
everybody appreciates the difficulty. Thank you, Tim. So the opportunity to further define rural character will occur at what point?
I'm making notes. I think after this meeting, I'll huddle with Adam and Sophia, and we'll talk about maybe how we can structure a Planning Commission workshop or on that. I think there's a couple issues related, a couple issues that we need to do this for. I think vacation rentals is another issue that we really haven't discussed that we need to discuss, and I think the rural character is another issue. So bring some of these up. Land use is where we're working, and I think that's where we're looking at having a separate rural element as well. So now is probably a good time for that. So I'm going to make a note, and then it could be that maybe at the next meeting we'll try and have a kind of a discussion, start a brainstorming session on the rural character, maybe the vacation rentals as well.
And we'll have seen the written report from Friends of the San Juans.
Yes, you'll have seen their comments as well.
Well, let me go through the rest of the commission and see if there are further questions. Mike Pickett.
I don't have any questions at this point. I do wonder, and I think we should really bring to light more clarity why this rural character issue continues to be an issue. I think I've been on this council committee for 6 years, and it's always raised as why we don't follow what Washington State suggests we do and highlight it. So it seems like if all of the meetings we had with the community and all of the responses we've got from them, there's a strong desire to have over the next 20 years an emphasis on retaining our rural character. And I just want to make sure that this plan does that. So I'll look forward to having that discussion and really an open discussion on why this doesn't seem to be happening. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Mike. Dale Roundy, do you have any comment or question?
Dale didn't seem to be on the phone anymore.
Okay. Steve Ruby?
No comments.
Okay, well, thank you, Sophia. If there are no further questions, we'll move on to section B, the historic and archaeological preservation. Ms. Cindy.
Alrighty, one moment. Okay, this is the briefing on the changes that have been made to the draft element 9, historic and archaeological preservation. In the middle of this presentation, we'll have a brief discussion on 2 existing policies that Linda Kohler and I wanted to talk over with you. And then at the end, I'll be looking for general questions and other edits. So the updates to this element are rather minor. Something that we've done throughout the plan is change the goals and policies into a more active voice, and so that's something that we did here as well. We changed policy 4A to align with our land division exemptions, which exempts some properties containing significant cultural resources from plat requirements when the sole purpose of the land division is to transfer it to the National Register of Historic Places or the State Inventory of Historic Places for preservation or conservation. We deleted some unneeded policies that are already set elsewhere in the plan, in the building code, or in other planning related documents. And then we added a new policy 6. Here on the slide it says goal, but it's a policy with sub-policies related to the permit application review process and our coordination with various entities. Some of these sub-policies also had to do with providing early cultural resource review for our applicants, and also with requiring professional qualifications for cultural resource reports and state reporting standards. So yeah, like I said, there are 2 policies, existing policies that I'd like to discuss with you. They're policy 5, suggesting that we appoint a historic review board, and then also policy 2, suggesting that we create a historic preservation plan. The county has never implemented either of these, likely because of a lack of resources. So the question is, at this point, should these policies stay in the plan? We're thinking that if there aren't resources available for the review board in the creation of a historic preservation plan, and if existing nonprofits already provide these services, perhaps these policies should be deleted. So I'll outline what these entail, and then I'd like to get your input. Policy 5 is appoint a historic review board composed of, but not limited to, representatives from each historical society. And their responsibilities are to conduct, monitor, and update the historic resources inventory. The review board also prepares a historic landmarks document describing and mapping the resource inventory. They review proposed permits for demolition of historic resources and recommend alternatives. And they also coordinate relocation or other preservation efforts. They would provide technical assistance, workshops, and educational programs to raise public awareness. They recommend designation of sites on registers of historic places. They would promote relationships between historic preservation and economic development. And they would pursue public and private funds to cover costs incurred by this development. So I'd like to open this one up for a discussion. I'm trying to get a feel for whether or not we think that this policy should stay in the element if it hasn't been implemented up to this point.
Sophia, you reference other organizations that fulfills maybe similar requirements?
Yes. Well, we have the historical societies and the museums on each island. I would have to look into who those other nonprofits are. Linda actually created this presentation. But I would be happy to look more into that if you're interested.
Well, let's go through the commission, the planning commissioners, and I'll go in reverse order for a change. So, Steve Ruby, do you have a comment on either policy 2 or policy 5, or any other question of Sophia related to this matter? Steve Ruby? No?
That he's just muted.
Okay.
Hey, wait. Now, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. I think there's a lag time, Steve. I'm sorry.
Okay. I don't have any specific comments about that. But I just got a phone call from Dale who says that he has been cut off from the Skype meeting. That's all. So he's listening to it, I guess, but he can't see anything.
Oh, dear. We've got technical challenges, no doubt, and let's keep trying to work through them. We'll see what we can come up with for technical assistance.
We can add him to the meeting if we have his phone number. If you get his phone number, I can add him.
It appears that we can probably add him to the meeting with a phone call, but
If you guys want to hold the meeting, do a pause, I can go get the phone number.
Okay.
But I can't have you talking if I'm going to take
Okay.
minutes.
Okay.
Well, I think we'll take a pause for a few minutes and see if we can correct this difficulty.
But don't pause that. It will take too long to reboot the spool.
One of the no-nos is leaving it recording. And
Okay.
not hitting pause on it. Okay. Do not speak while I'm gone.
Okay. Oh, boy.
talking to Ingrid when I went in there.
Okay. Let's see. See if that worked at all.
Hello.
Hi, Dale.
Hello.
You're back in the meeting. This is Erica.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. We're good to go.
Thank you. Okay, we'll resume. Steve, Ruby, I was asking if you had a question about, or comment about policy 2 or policy 5 or anything else in Sophia's presentation.
No, I don't have any comments.
Dale, I don't know, maybe you weren't able to participate. Were you on the call when Sophia did the briefing on the archaeological preservation?
Yes, yeah, I think it was right in the middle of that. It was at 9:29 when I was cut off. But I'm fine. I've gone, I don't really have any concerns. If the group heard everything and was there, I'm good because I was happy with the report in general.
Okay. Mike Pickett?
Yeah, so I guess it wasn't submitted, it wasn't accomplished in the last 20 years because of budget. Budget is constrained, so I think the question is going to be, if we leave it in, is it going to be something somebody's going to be dealing with 10 years from now, trying to figure out why it wasn't done, or dealing with the fact that it wasn't done. But I remember in doing Brickworks that the town has a historical review board that actually had some teeth in the sense that to get the permit done to refurbish Brickworks, we had to get the approval of their historic review board. And they did go through details of the building that we were going to, or the construction we were going to do. And we had to get their approval before the town would permit this. So it was a very active and useful board for that purpose. I guess I'd consider what their experience has been. Would they do it again? How time consuming is it? What does it do to the cost of construction or demolition, et cetera? So I don't have a strong view one way or the other. I think having it might be beneficial to preserving our rural character, as it would be working to preserve some of our older structures and older barns and things like that, which I think would appeal to people who are concerned about our rural nature. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mike. Tim?
Two thoughts. First, I agree. It's the sort of thing that it's a sort of.
He just shut himself off.
I think you hit.
Well, good. I'm glad you're taking some time off.
Somebody's got.
I think some sleep and write your papers.
Somebody else.
All right.
I'm giving a planning commission presentation. Okay. I'm in the middle of the presentation. Thank you.
The recording we've already done. Microphone is on.
I think somebody came to Sophia's desk.
Sorry about that. Yeah. We had some noise in the hallway. I should have muted myself to talk to them.
All right. But where is Tim Blanchard? Where are you, Tim?
Okay.
I think he called.
Somebody's got some background information that we're all hearing, so maybe everybody mute.
It was on my end. There's noise in the hallway. I'll mute until it's my turn to talk.
Okay, thank you.
And now we're looking for Tim Blanchard.
Yes.
Okay. Sophia,
You know, this is Mike Pickett. Mike Pickett again for future meetings. Is it necessary to do Skype? And maybe it is for the public, I don't know, but we all get copies of everything we're looking at on Skype, except for Camille. And if Skype and this dial-in is causing conflicts or problems for muting, etc., I wonder why we have Skype. But that's just waiting for Tim. So.
Thank you, Mike. So we are recommending folks call in because when they join with the Skype meeting, we do have external issues, and the call-in number. So Skype gives you a call-in conference number or the option to click and join the meeting. We're finding that it's more reliable if you actually click and join via phone. So it's really your option, but the phone is more reliable. The conference call. This is Erica.
So
yeah,
Mike,
that's what I use. Go ahead.
This is Camille. You mentioned the possibility of looking at this as part of the workshop on, or maybe I'm projecting this on you, but the workshop on rural character. I mean, there's the economic issue of lack of funding, and then there's the possibility of a review board because it would serve a greater purpose.
Yeah, you know, actually, Camille, I think that's a good idea. I didn't mention that or think about that, but I think that's a very good idea because it does link this historical review board to rural character versus tourism. And I could see this becoming, you know, important to attract people to the islands. I'm not sure we need any more of that or much more of that. So yeah, I think that's actually would be a good place for a discussion about the review board, historical review board. That's a good idea.
So this is Erica. What we can do is give you a little bit of a background on what would be the benefit of having a review board. So generally speaking, there's a range. There is the National Historic Register, the State Historic Register, and then when you have a local historic review board, you have a local preservation landmark where you're doing things at the local level that maybe maybe those buildings aren't important enough to get on a state or national register. And there's probably some grant money available for those buildings. So we can give you a little bit of an overview about what that does for your, in terms of those things as part of that briefing. That would be helpful.
Erica, are you saying that there could be grant money for preserving rural structures that wouldn't qualify as historical, monument?
Well, typically the way these work is there's the national, the state, and then if you have a local register of historic places, you might have nominated buildings that are significant at the local level but don't rise to state and local. And sometimes if you have a local register, there can be grant money available for things that are on any of those registers. So there might be grant money available to help preserve that building. So that's one of the benefits. And usually there's also design review around making sure that new buildings fit in with a historic character. So cities and towns often have these because they're more dense. For example, in East Sound, you could have a historic, if you had a historic board there, they would be looking at new buildings fitting in with old buildings. We already have design standards in East Sound that kind of do that. It would just be another layer. But it's really grant. And then the last thing that these historic boards do is a lot of times there's a regulation that says if somebody wants to demolish one of these buildings, there has to be a 30 or 60 day or 90 day waiting period before demolition that would allow a different entity to come back in and buy the building or move the building rather than it just being demolished. There's just a holding period. But you can't actually keep somebody from demolishing a building that is on your local register. You can just put a regulation in that says you have to wait and give somebody the opportunity to move it. So those are some of the things you would think about whether you wanted a historic board. I think just having been here and seeing our struggles, that it would be quite a struggle, I think, for us to add a historic review board into what we already do here. Definitely, it would take, it's a position. So.
Oh, what about archaeological preservation? How is that layered?
Archaeology preservation is actually protected by state and federal law. So we are provided with maps from the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. These maps are not available to the general public. And they tell us when we need to require an archaeologist assess a property or a proposed development. And then those reports are routed to the different affected tribes of the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, and they will often result in either additional work. Sometimes there's monitoring, or sometimes they find that there is no need for anything additional on the property. So those are regulated.
Okay. Tim Blanchard, are you back on the call?
No, I have to add him real quick.
I am, yes.
Oh, he is. Oh, good.
I don't know what happened, but I am back.
Good.
Would you like to comment?
Yeah, I don't know whether anyone heard any comment I was making previously or not. I just don't know, because I don't know when I got disconnected or how long I was talking to myself. So
I'm afraid it might have been for a while.
I'm afraid that might be true. Just very briefly, it seems to me that trying to have a historic board is probably impractical, not only because of budget, but because of availability of board members and folks who would want to serve. We've had enough trouble keeping the Planning Commission fully staffed, and it's not just in the planning area. It's almost all of the county citizens advisory committees that have this problem. So attempting to add one is potentially problematic, and runs the risk of elevating the one or two people who are interested to sort of permanent county positions. And so I don't think that's such a great idea. On the other hand, I do think it makes some sense to have someone take a look and have some ability to at least put the brakes on projects that would eliminate historical and cultural buildings and structures. It would have been very handy to have such a thing before the land bank dismantled and did away with the last log dump in the county and the Judd Cove project, for example. That is one of those things that I don't think we expected, since historic preservation was within the land bank's charter, but somebody that would have been very handy to have someone be able to put up their hand and say, wait a minute, we should be preserving that. So while I don't think a board's practical, I think some process for reviewing such things is probably important, so that we don't continue to not be aware of cultural and heritage destruction within the county.
I would agree. Are there other further comments? If not, we'll move on to the capital facilities element and Appendix 7, Capital Facilities Plan Inventory Assessment, and Sophia Casson is presenting.
Before we move on, there are actually a few more slides in this presentation. So if you don't mind,
Not at
we do
all.
have another policy.
Leaping ahead.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, there's one more policy to look at, and then just a couple other things that I'm going to brief you on. Let's see here. So I'd like to get your feedback on existing policy 2, which is work with local historical societies to prepare a historic preservation plan to be incorporated into this element, including a detailed description of the county historical background, Native American presence, local history, and identification of historical trends, assessment of preservation needs and existing data, status of local preservation efforts, and a discussion of issues affecting the local historic properties in the future, specific goals and policies for preservation and implementation measures, incorporating the goals and policies of this element, and those implementation measures would focus primarily on voluntary efforts and incentives. So this, like policy 5, has been in this element for a while, but it hasn't been implemented. Yeah, any thoughts?
So the department would be working with the local historical society?
That is how, yeah, the policy reads.
Nobody had that job description right now. Okay. All right. All right. Well, Tim, would you like to start off with any comment on policy 2? I hope you haven't disappeared again.
He's gone.
He's gone. Oh dear. All right.
I've got nothing.
Gail Randy?
Shows he's there.
Okay.
Maybe skip and go to Steve. Oh, wait. And looks like Tim's almost back. He's back.
I don't know what's going on, but anyway, I'm back.
Okay. Do you have a comment on policy 2 or a suggestion?
Well, I didn't hear the whole. I got cut off somewhere in the middle of there, but I certainly think that, as I mentioned before, some process needs to happen so that we've got some coordination as to what we should be looking at in any event. I think voluntary efforts and incentives are probably a good idea, except to the extent that there ought to be some process, like I say, at least putting the brakes on and requiring a focused consideration about these things before a demolition permit is permitted. So,
Erica, do you have a suggestion as to where this might fall in a work plan?
In order to sort of be able to put the brakes on something, we would have to have an inventory and a process by which we had decided which buildings were important to preserve or protect. Well,
where I was headed with this, if I could, was if we put together, well, working with historical societies is fine. Rather than establishing essentially a standing historic board, it does make sense to try and find a way to at least do a baseline process so that things could be identified that would fit that bill. And I'm sure that would involve, I'm not sure how we would put that together. It would require some outreach to the historical societies or something. I suspect if we were to make known that we wanted to put together such a registry that we would generate some interest from folks, so that we could have a chance of putting together a list, and we could perhaps tee it up to update that list on some periodic basis, not every year or anything like that, but and or perhaps establish a baseline list and then a process for someone to nominate an additional structure, or, well, however we're going to define whatever that historical development or thing is. I don't know. I just think it makes sense to have some process so that somebody who wants to make sure something is protected can ask the question and raise the issue of XYZ barn, bridge, log dump, something that would not rise to the level of protection from the state at an archaeology level. Otherwise, it's purely aspirational, and I don't think much is going to happen with this policy. Not much has happened with this policy, at least to my knowledge. But if we felt it was important, and I sort of do, because it is an element that gets at least one part of protecting our character.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's see.
This is Mike. I have a, sorry,
Go ahead,
can you have this Mike again? No, it's Mike. Hey, so does anyone recall people during our workshops and all those things working up to the plan, that there was a public concern for protecting historical buildings or historical places? I don't recall that, which Adam was, maybe did, or Erica, you did. There didn't seem to be much of a public outcry for this kind of a safeguard, if you will, or kind of a celebration of our heritage.
Matt?
Erica.
We haven't heard much of an outcry in our public participation, but I wouldn't expect us to hear something. This typically is going to happen when one of the buildings, you're going to hear an outcry when something's actually proposed to happen. It usually is more reactive. So usually,
yeah, that's true.
That's typically when you would see that.
Sophia, is there anything on this section B?
Just a minute. Camille?
Yes. Hi, Steve.
Under policy 2, my only comment was, it says work with local historical societies. Who's going, under this policy, who is working with them? Where in the county government is interacting with these historical societies?
This is Erica. We don't have anybody who does this. Usually, most places that have something like have a program like this have a staff position who's charged with that responsibility. So it would be a resource issue.
Dale, did you have any further comment on this? Okay. All right. Well, let's move ahead to the capital facilities report.
There is just a little bit more in this presentation.
Okay.
But I will hurry through it.
You before moving ahead. Thanks, Sophia.
So there are 2 code amendments that we will need to make for consistency if proposed policy 6C and D are adopted. These proposed policies will help the DCD permit processors, and it'll ease some of our current permitting issues. The following language would need to be added to our development standards for historic and archaeological preservation. F, when required, cultural resource reports must be prepared by a professional archaeologist who meets the Secretary of the Interior's professional qualification standards and state law. And then G, cultural resource reports must be prepared in accordance with the Washington State Standards for Cultural Resource Reporting. So those are just two code amendments that will need to be made if the policies in this element are adopted. And we did receive some comments from the 2016 from the State Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation that affected some of the changes that were made to this. And then some of their comments are addressed in other elements. But in summary, they suggest that we add the protection of cultural resources in the goals and policies of other plan elements and in the regulations in our land division and critical areas code, and then also in the shoreline master program. We do address historical and cultural resources in other elements, including the land use element and in the SMP. And additionally, the land division code exempts properties listed on the National Historic Places in Washington State Inventory of Historic Places. You can see our responses to the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation in greater detail in the staff report. That is the end of the presentation.
Okay, I feel free to move on then.
Yeah, if we're ready for capital facilities.
Yeah, I think we are, Sophia.
Okay. Just a second. All right. Capital facilities. I'll be briefing you and then gathering your feedback on the changes that have been made to the draft capital facilities element and plan. This is also part of the comp plan update. First, we'll do kind of a quick refresher on what these documents are. I'll give you an overview of the changes that have been made. And then at the end, I'd like to do comments and questions. I'll be looking for feedback specifically on the setup of the new element, or the new draft element, and on the goals and policies. And then after that, if you have comments on the substandard level of service findings in the capital facilities plan, I would be interested in hearing your thoughts on those, or anything else. But those are the things that I'm particularly interested in. So this is the first draft of the revised element. So this is the first time that we'll be looking at this together. And then it's the fourth draft of the capital facilities plan. So we have looked at this together several times. The element contains an introduction to capital facilities, explaining our category A and B facilities, and then also the relationships with other elements. Element 7 also contains the goals and policies for capital facilities. It establishes our level of service standards, and these policies also guide county action on how we manage facilities under our own jurisdiction and how we work alongside other service providers. Appendix 7 is the capital facilities plan. It was previously called the capital facilities inventory, but we thought it would be appropriate to change the name because it not only contains the inventory of capital facilities, but also the level of service assessments based on the current and projected population. It includes a forecast of future needs, the level of service formulas for reference, and the capital improvement plans. So now I'll give you an overview of the changes that have been made to both of these drafts. The major changes to the element well, this is a proposed repeal and replacement, because there are quite a few changes that we are suggesting. We transferred all of the level of service formulas and tables to the capital facilities plan, because the formulas seemed like information may be more appropriate for a technical appendix. We made changes to the document to make it a little bit more clean and easy to use and consistent with other planning documents. We updated out-of-date information. For example, the previous one referenced county-owned and operated solid waste facilities, which today are no longer county-owned and operated. And then we added a goal and policies about environmental and financial sustainability for infrastructure and fleet equipment in the face of climate change. Major changes to the capital facilities plan. We added the level of service formulas and tables from the 2009 element, and you can see those in attachment 2 of the capital facilities plan. We also added capacity excess and deficit calculations to the level of service assessments, using the adopted level of service to show if we meet standards now and if we'll meet them in the future, what sort of wiggle room we have. We identified facilities with substandard level of service, and we followed up with the folks in charge of those facilities. We updated the Orcas community sewer systems map to show large on-site sewage systems, because we had included those in our LOS analysis, but they were not on the map. And then finally, we added attachment 3. Sorry, there's a bit of a commotion. Attachment 3, which are the capital improvement plans. It's mandatory by the GMA that we include those in this appendix. That includes the 2020 to 2025 6-year capital improvement plan, the clean water 6-year CIP, the parks, trails, and natural areas plan, and presently the Public Works 2017 operations master plan. However, after hearing a bit from Public Works, it's possible that we might be removing that one. If you're wondering where the transportation capital improvement plan is, it's in element 6, transportation, because we don't do an assessment of transportation in this appendix. So now we'll talk a bit about level of service. What is level of service? The level of service standards are standards that help us to make sure that we don't outgrow our capacity to serve residents. This ties in closely with the land use element. The standards are determined locally, and we have the chance to change them during the comp plan update. They're also required by the Growth Management Act. For category A, level of service, the level of service assessments are required to show that we have adequate capacity for these facilities before the county allows more development. And the term that we use for this is concurrency. For category B, there isn't a concurrency requirement, and the level of service is calculated mainly just as a benchmark to let us know where we're going and where we might need to increase capacity soon. I would like to give you an example of how we use this and how it's calculated. We do these calculations by comparing the facility capacity to our current population and the projected population. And we use the level of service equations and standards that are adopted in the 2009 capital facilities element, because those are the ones that are adopted now, and we evaluate from now through 2036. So as an example, solid waste is a category A capital facility, so we are required to determine level of service for it and for it to be available concurrently with development. We have established LOS F as adequate for available transfer facility capacity on San Juan, Orcas, and Lopez. So in the capital facilities plan, you'll see this table on top, the white one, showing what capacity equates to what level of service score. In the green box, LOSA, which is a high amount of available capacity, and then in the red box is LOSF, which equates to low available facility capacity. In the current plan, LOSF is what we have adopted, so that means that we are comfortable with up to or less than 10% available facility capacity before facilities need to show an action plan for how they're going to accommodate the expected population growth. The table below with the blue bar, table 3B, shows the estimated tons per day that the facility receives, the estimated surplus capacity, the available capacity as a percent, and then the LOS that it achieves. So we determine the LOS by referencing to the table above using those numbers. We've calculated 40% available capacity for 2017 and 30% for 2036. So because any facility capacity greater than 25% available is LOSA, both 2036 and 17 have or are projected to have LOSA. So we did this for all capital facilities. And these here on the screen are the ones that have or are projected to have substandard level of service. Some water systems and sewage systems on Orcas and Lopez currently have substandard LOS. However, they are in the clear for a few different reasons. The East End Water Users Association has already expanded their capacity and are just waiting for Department of Health approval before we can start counting their numbers or their new numbers. And then West Beach Resort and the Lopez Opalco water system are both private and are therefore not, they don't have to support development that will come with population growth. So, and then for sewage, Doe Bay and West Beach Resort were found to have substandard LOS, but again, as private businesses, they're not required to support development. There were 4 other categories, though, that needed a bit more attention, and those are listed below, kind of with the yellow slow down sign. But these are all Category B facilities, so these standards are a bit more flexible under GMA, and the LOS calculations really just let us know what we might need to start to pay more attention to. First was Public Works. They have the adopted LOS of B for building square feet per capita. And we talked with Russ Harvey several months ago, who was aware of Public Works facilities needs, and they have plans in place in the Public Works Facilities Master Plan. He let us know about their plans for the Beaverton Valley Operations Center, the new Public Works, or a planned Public Works Operations Center, possibly at a site on Port Stanley Road. And we recommend that we do not make a change in the LOS standards for Public Works facilities. The planned projects that Public Works has will likely keep them above the LOS standards if the projects are implemented. Next was Sheriff. We have the adopted LOS standard of B for enforcement officers and for station square feet per capita. And our calculations brought about LOSF on San Juan Island for enforcement officers, F projected for 2036 on Orcas for enforcement officers, and then for Lopez in terms of station square feet. They're presently LOSF and are projected to remain there if things stay the same. However, the LOS assessments didn't quite align with the needs that Sheriff Krebs had identified when we spoke with him. The LOS assessment said that San Juan Island needs more enforcement officers, and that the station is adequate in size. But when we spoke with Sheriff Krebs, he said that station square feet is actually the big need for the San Juan Island station. They need a bit more room for staff storage and for operations. And then at the same time, the LOS assessment said that Lopez needs more station square feet. But when we spoke with Sheriff Krebs, he let us know that the number of enforcement officers on Lopez are the actual need, because with only 3, like they currently have, somebody is always off duty, and then if somebody takes a vacation, there's only 1 officer around to respond, which poses a bit of a safety issue. So staff's recommendation after speaking with Sheriff Krebs is to consider adopting new level of service standards for sheriff facilities, because as they stand, the current standards don't quite reflect the needs on the ground. There are 2 different ways that we can go about this. The preferred option is to research other counties' LOS standards and to work with Sheriff Krebs to change our standards to reflect our needs. And then the other alternative is to just go ahead and change the adopted LOS to F as opposed to B as adequate. And that would just mean that we're saying that the current F scores are acceptable, but that information isn't all that helpful to us, which is why we recommend that first option. Next was parks. They have an adopted LOSB for all of their park facilities. Or we have adopted that standard for all parks facilities. And what came out as substandard was camping on San Juan Island and day use sites on Orcas, Lopez, and Shaw, as you can see in this table. And staff's recommendation is to continue to assess camping as part of the tourism study and the tourism master plan. We went ahead and shared this information with Parks and Fair, and yeah, we thought it would be most useful for them if any sort of action was to be taken on this. And then we recommend considering deleting the use of day use sites as a level of service metric for parks. We find it a poor metric because the parks, trails, and natural areas plan, which is where we get all of this information, it doesn't define what a day use site is, and it also doesn't consider the size of the site in our counts. So like when we count a day use site, a 200-acre park counts for the same as like a half-acre park with a picnic bench. Additionally, day use sites are not something that are required to be counted for this assessment by the GMA. And it seems that the state and federal parks that we have make the number of park facilities adequate for the population. And then finally, fire and EMS came out as substandard for a couple stations. Just to clarify, we are only assessing facilities on islands within the established fire districts. The LOS assessments found that the facilities on Brown, Pearl, and Shaw were substandard according to our adopted standards. The standards are based on the ratings from the Washington State Ratings Board, or WSRB. Both Brown and Pearl Island have both Brown and Pearl Islands have LOSE. But I spoke with our fire marshal, RJ, who connected me with the fire chiefs and we got some updated information on those. Same with Shaw. The fire chief of that district let us know that their LOS should actually be D because their WSRB score had been updated since we had last taken that inventory. So it should be 8, and that will be changed in the assessments in the CFP. We and also we heard from RJ that the facilities on Brown and Pearl Island are not actually fire stations. They're just equipment caches. And so for that reason, we recommend that Brown and Pearl Islands be reclassified and then that we set a different LOS standard, perhaps for those, because they shouldn't be held to the same standards as an actual fire station. We did receive some comments. The Fire Chief of District 2, which is Orcas, Fire Chief Scott Williams shared with us some edits. Those mainly had to do with a few different parts of the District 2 inventory, especially having to do with their personnel and their fleet. We heard from B. Von Tobel, who corrected the Orcas Airport identifier code from KROS to KORS. We had made a mistake and hadn't caught that. We heard from John Shannon, the Fire Chief of District 5, who corrected the SHA inventory and their WSRB ratings. We also heard from District 4 Chief Jim Giglione, who updated the WSRB rating for the Locas Village area. We know that Public Works has some minor edits. I spoke with Christine Correa over there yesterday, and we expect their comments soon, and we'll be making edits according to what they point out. And like with the introduction, we heard from the Friends of the San Juans. We received their comments last night, but we haven't had the chance to read those yet, and I'll be sharing those with you soon. So with that, if there are any comments or questions on the setup of the new draft element or the goals and policies, let's talk about those first, and then we can do the capital facilities plan second, just so that we're looking at one document at a time. If you guys would like, I can walk us through the new goals and policies in the element, but if you already have your comments ready, we can, well, yeah, whatever works for you.
Do you want to go ahead and comment, commissioners, on where we are at this point, or should we have Cynthia walk us through the element? I'll start.
Camille, this is, oh, go ahead.
Mike Pickett.
No, I don't have, at this point, I don't have any comments.
Dale Randy. Sure if Dale's with us.
Shows us mic's on.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was on mute. I have comments. Let me make sure I know where I am in this document. Page, so it may not be the right time for this comment, but it's concerning the local. Sure. It's on page 21. It concerns the Lopez Village urban growth area, and it's a fairly extensive discussion about the Fish Bay Sewer District. So is that, you tell me if this is the right time to talk about that, or is that designed to be a second phase here, in the second phase?
Is this in the capital facilities element or the plan? The big document or the smaller one?
It looks to me it's in attachment B. Attachment B, page 21.
I see. Okay,
attachment
so that's
B. Yeah.
Inventory. Well, if we don't have any comments on the element, we can move ahead to the plan.
Does anybody
I'll make
else?
my comment. I'll make my comment when we get to the right right point in the conversation. Thanks.
Okay.
It-
Tim,
Yes, I believe, well, in terms of just initial comments to the restructuring and the reorganization, the only suggestion I have is that since Attachment B, Appendix 7, is an appendix to, if I understand correctly, is an appendix to the capitals facilities and services element, what we're calling the CFE, for purposes of the revised plan, the revised comprehensive plan. I think it would be better not to call Appendix 7 the capital facilities plan, because of the confusion that likely will cause for people who were either familiar with the past or not. Essentially, let me ask this. It seems as though, I'll just get this out because we're not in person, so I apologize for that interactivity difference. It seems like what we're saying is that we're really, Appendix 7 is a capital facilities index and some additional reference information, such as because we've moved the LOS formulas and maybe some other things. That would make sense as an attachment to an element, but as it is, it almost, I think people are going to be confused about what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. We'll brainstorm some other names. We could go back to calling it the inventory. But yeah, I see what you're saying. We'll see what we can do.
So that was the main comment there. The other question I had at a high level is, I guess, why shouldn't we have or does it matter? I guess my concern is that the LOS formulas may be important down the road because they will tell us whether we're meeting those LOS levels, so as to trigger some additional review or additional action, and yet we're relegating the formulas to the appendix, which is fine if it's not something that can be reviewed or revised independently of a review of the plan. Otherwise, we could have whatever protection we've built into this compromised by a change in the appendix to those formulas. And I think it just ought to be clear that that's not something that we would be doing, because in adopting the levels of service that we're talking about, we have to be relying upon those formulas being constant. Does my question make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Erica, would you mind speaking on this?
Yes. So we can take a look and see the way that we've structured this to make sure that doesn't happen. Usually we don't update that appendix except when we update the plan. So
Right.
There's a process. The intent when we did this was to have us adopt the level of service, whatever it was for each of the services, as a policy statement. So in the policy statement, we say we adopt LOSC. If we need to add a little bit more description of saying what C is in the element, we could do that. But typically, where you actually do the calculations ends up in the appendix. That's pretty normal. So we can look and see. I think what you're getting at, Tim, is that it says LOSC in the policy, but in the back, if somebody decides, somebody can monkey around with what LOSC mean.
Well, my point is, if someone's reading this and thinking about either a development that they're planning or looking at it more broadly from potential impact on the community, it's difficult to go back to the index to figure out what LOSC is first. And second, if once we let people know what LOSC is in a particular case, it would be really unfortunate if a change happened in the appendix, which changed that. And I think, just thinking of some of the discussion we had in the transportation element and some of the proposals we had there, the letters are staying the same, and I think maybe most cases, maybe all cases, the ranges, we're still in the same ranges, but the ranges are different in some of those areas. So, which is fine in a comprehensive update, but I don't know. It's a confusing space, and since we're going to step up to the plate and nail down these levels of service, at a minimum, I would at least parenthetically indicate what level CABD, whatever we're adopting, is in the element itself. And then a cross-reference is probably fine. I mean,
we can do that. We'll take a look about how we might be able to address that better. I think that's certainly possible.
Those are my general comments on this. I do have comments on the. I do have a number of comments on the element, which I guess isn't surprising since it's our first time through it. But as far as the general structural organizational comments, that's all I had.
I think we've gone through everyone. So shall we move to the comments on the element, please? Dale, you had something you wanted to just talk about on page 21.
Well, I did, and it's both specific to that project discussed on page 21, which is the sewer district facility, but it also gets to trying to understand the relationship between a discussion like this and the role of the county, or the role of the planning commission and council in the process by which a sewer district like the Fish Bay one goes through what is referred to in the third paragraph as well, I'll just quote it, as Fish Bay Sewer District moves forward, construction of a new anaerobic cell and treatment pond will be a priority. That will allow consideration, it says, consideration of expanding the service area. So does the sewer, when we put something like this in the plan, does that imply that the sewer district will go on its own and do this and decide how to expand it? Or do they do it after running it through the planning commission / ultimately the council? And I was planning to ask that question to Linda because I know she's been so involved with the Lopez urban growth area, but I know we have a whole group of people that will be filling in that role as we go forward. So that's my first point. How does this, using this as an example, how does it relate? How does this overall plan, looking at LOS levels, et cetera, fit into what a specific facility does or doesn't do and how it goes about doing it? That's my general question.
Sophia, would you like me to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I think you're the best person to answer.
So in terms of the private facilities, the water and sewer district purveyors in our county, each of those entities has a requirement under state laws to make a plan, a capital facilities plan that includes financing and boundaries for their district. Our requirement, at least in the capital facilities plan, is to, we're required to sort of inventory from their plans what they have in their plan. And their plans are just like ours, or maybe even better, in that their plans, they implement them with, they put funding forward and say, we're going to expand this or do this in their plan, and then they build it into their rates, and then move forward. The issue, how it's related to development in the county, is that I'll step back. Each of those plans, we review them to make sure they're consistent with our comprehensive plan. For example, if the sewer district, they have a service area shown in their plan, the county will review that service area and make sure that their service area doesn't go outside of an urban area, because under growth management, you can only extend sewer in very limited circumstances. And the same with the water system plans. When they get approved, ultimately these plans get approved by the State Department of Health, but they send them to us for us to look at them and make sure that they are consistent with our plans. For example, the water systems, we're checking to see that the population forecast that they're using in their plan is consistent with our population forecast. We're also checking to see that the places that they're proposing water service is consistent with the areas where we have areas designated for development. So that's the sort of the check and balance. How those plans are related to development is if these districts can't accommodate or they don't expand, our regulations we have regulations in place that won't let us actually issue a permit if they don't have capacity. So if they don't do their planned expansion and their system isn't approved for the number of hookups by the state that are needed, it results in a de facto moratorium on development, because we can't approve a development that doesn't have water and doesn't have sewer if it's in one of these districts. Does that make sense? Hopefully that wasn't too rambling.
Yeah, it does make sense. So in that context, how do you explain, or how do we explain the fact that the Lopez Island School District became a contract customer and is nowhere near the village, which then uses a significant, I assume, a significant part of the capacity of the village sewer treatment facility?
The Growth Management Act does contain an exemption that allows schools that are outside of the urban growth area to connect to sewer. So that's how that happens.
Okay,
yeah.
That's helpful. So
it's one of the minimal.
It's one of the few exceptions, right?
Yes.
So in that paragraph that was changed, there's some minor modifications, more clarification of verbiage, I suppose. But the third paragraph, where it talks about the sewer district working on a plan for expanding the service area, and they'd have to do that with a new cell. That service area, could it expand outside the urban growth area to which the village can expand over time? Or could it serve the whole island? Because I'm getting the sense that somebody may think
around
that's
the off the road, around the corner there. I'll be down. Oh.
Yeah. Are you still there, Dale?
I am. I thought we were being interrupted by something.
It did sound as though we were being interrupted. Please proceed.
So was my question really, this whole issue of expanding the service area, could that be beyond the Lopez Village urban growth area? Is that, I'm questioning the intent of the language there.
It would not be able to expand outside of the UGA. It might be able to expand to a limited area of more intense rural development. So there are several in the vicinity that it might be able to expand to accommodate. So the Marine Center designation to the south. So there's some of those areas, those limited areas of more intense rural development are little rural activity centers. They can sometimes be served by sewer also, but we can just double check to make sure that nothing in their plan is indicating that they're expanding outside of the UGA.
Yeah, well, to me, it's the ultimate concern of having an expanding sewer district in the middle of a relatively small village. And as the village grows, it's one thing to have it grow to meet the residents that we wish to have in the village to keep them out of the rural areas. But to bring a sewer treatment plant, which is somewhat inconsistent with nearby residences, it just seemed to be a potential question. And the idea of a school district, for instance, or even possibly a largely expanded area out there where the Islander is, with all the camping they're trying to add in, it would seem to put more and more pressure on a very dear resource, which the village has now, and which basically overflows to a certain degree with controls into the area just outside Fish Bay. So those are my concerns, and I was trying to understand how we as county participate in making sure that type of expansion of a service area is done appropriately.
Yeah, so we would be reviewing their plan. It would be sent to us for review. We would be reviewing it for consistency with our plan. It looks like it does already serve the Marine Center limited area, so it would be serving additional growth there. But like I said, those are the limited exceptions where it's allowed.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'll stand informed better than I was yesterday. Thank you.
Mike Pickett, did you have comments here?
I do not.
Steve Ruby?
No comments.
Thank you, Steve. Tim Blanchard, you're on.
Okay, yeah, I do. And the comments that I have are not on appendix, are not on the attachment B plan. They're on the element. Is that appropriate at this point?
I believe so.
Okay. The first one, my first set of comments were on a couple comments were on page 5, and it just goes to the use of pronouns. It's kind of confusing. It was kind of confusing when I read through it because we now have the CFE and we have the plan, at least the way those are named. And then there's a sentence that's also referring to the transportation element. And then we have a sentence that begins it. I think that refers to, this is in line 6, I think that refers to the transportation element. It would be better if we said the transportation element also includes. And then at the end of that first paragraph on page 5, I think it's in line 10, we say Appendix 7 provides level of service analysis for this plan. I wouldn't say this plan because that's confusing since Appendix 7 is the plan, at least as it's currently drafted. I would say, however, Appendix 7 provides the level of service analysis for the CFE. Just so it's, anyway, anyway, just to make it clear what folks are talking about when we're reading through those things. So that was on page 5 of the CFE document. The next one I had was yellow stickies. Where are they? On page 9. Page 9 is well, actually, starting on page 8 is this discussion of capital improvement plans and what happens if the capital financing plan is not facility plan is not financially reasonable. Things county should consider as solutions, and it's a list of 1 through 9. It seems to me that what's missing from that list is a 10th item, which it would be re-examining the need for the underlying service. We're talking about a long enough planning horizon that reducing a service might not be the issue. It might be necessary to expand a facility to keep providing a service, but if we don't have the money for it, it seems to me that a 10th item that with something like reexamining the need for the underlying governmental service would make sense. I can't think of an example right now off the top of my head what that might be, but it seems to me over the planning horizon, it could be that we might have a service that is essentially at some point in the future being provided, or perhaps ought to be provided based on budgetary considerations by an NGO or a charity or some community organization. So I would recommend we add item 10 to that list of non-capital solutions that starts on page 8. So does that make sense? I don't want to run on because I can't tell whether I should proceed to the next comment or not.
Yeah, I've added the suggestion, and we'll take a look at it again. But I've got it added. So if you have other suggestions, we can move on.
Yes, I do. On page 10, policy number 2. This kind of picks up on some of the conversation that we were just having in connection with Dale's comment. Policy number 2 says prohibit the provision of urban level services, facilities and services outside the UGAs. I think that's generally a good idea, and I'm supportive of that. On the other hand, that policy would seem to preclude us from, for example, potentially extending a sewer system in accordance with the exceptions that exist, or that school exception that Erica mentioned, or other sorts of things. So it seems to me that there needs to be a qualifier on that policy. Except as permitted under GMA exceptions or whatever the right language there would be. Mm-hmm. Prohibits the problem. Prohibit would say we're not going to do it, even though we might be able to do it under an applicable exception in the GMA or the WAC.
Does the second sentence in that policy address what you're talking about? And is there language that you would add to it?
I guess the problem. Well, that's the point I'm trying to get to. That seems to be different because. Well, okay. If we think that does it, fine. I just wasn't sure it was clear enough, and prohibit seemed. Anyway, all right. I accept that. Never mind. I think that's probably okay. We'll see if anybody else reads it with that problem. Thanks. My question is on C. Sorry. I'm on page 11, section 7.2, point B, policy category A, C, and D. So primarily C, though. We say, do not apply LOS standards for category A, public facilities and services provided by entities other than the county during budgeting. What does that mean? We're going to look to see whether the service overall satisfies the level of, or the facilities overall, if they're in category A, meet the level of service. But we're not going to. So what's it mean not to apply LOS standards during budgeting? I guess if we parse the sentence.
Erica?
The intent of that policy, I think, was to, and we can. Why don't you highlight that, and we'll look at some additional wording. I think the idea there was to make it clear that the county wasn't going to budget for projects that are in the sewer district. For example, the county doesn't need to consider in its budget the anaerobic digester that by a different entity that's in a different entity plan. I think that's the concept with that policy. So we can look at a way to make that a little bit clearer.
Okay. I mean, that's the main thing I was trying to figure out is because obviously the county's got to consider it, because if one of these other, if a junior taxing district or an NGO, for example, like we have managing solid waste on Orcas, for example, isn't meeting, then the county's got to think about something there. It may not be budgeting, but obviously the county still has responsibility to address those LOS issues one way or another, even if it's just to say, okay, until this happens, you can't develop. But that doesn't seem consistent with the rest of the planning concept. So that's all that was the main thing. Obviously D addresses what we expect those other parties to do. So.
Right. Yeah, what we should be doing in our plan is we should be looking to see if there's not capacity and then making a decision as to whether or not we change our land use to make it so that, we have to change how many houses can go someplace, or if we change level of service standard. Kind of those two choices.
Right, exactly. Okay. The next question that I had is at page 13, and that's just a question. And that is, I understand that for category A, facilities and services, we have to apply we have to do a concurrency analysis, and under concurrency principle, if those don't meet the requisite level of service, then we can't approve development. I understand that that's what has to be. What about category B, facilities and services? Do we have the ability to impose the same sort of development limitations as a matter of our comprehensive plan and UDC rules? Or are we precluded from doing that?
As part of the capital facilities plan, this is Erica, you can decide that you want to have more of, you can decide which ones are A and B. You can decide to have more things that are part of concurrency management. We've just have the minimum required. But I think the better way to do it is the way that we are doing it here, which is we take a look at those level of service, and it's really it's an information process. And we could, as part of this plan, decide that, for example, on Lopez, if they need another deputy and they're not going to get another deputy and they're not meeting level of service, you could decide to change your land use plan to something that requires less or generates less calls. You could decide to do that as during your comprehensive plan process, but it wouldn't affect development at the permit level. I think that's the real difference. And I think the purpose of having done this analysis is for us to have those discussions. Do we need to consider, changes to the land use plan to, make the capital facilities plan work better, or are we okay with it?
Yeah, well, the reason I was asking the question is we've had a number of comments at a variety of different hearings over the course of the comprehensive plan update project from folks who would, if I can paraphrase for them, would like us to do what we can to limit development, or limit population growth. And obviously we can't, we don't have the ability to directly control that, but we do, in a sense, have some controls with respect to with respect to the requirements of category A, facility and service concurrency. What I was just trying to figure out is whether there was anything in having us look at category B services and facilities and see whether any of those rose to the level of saying, look, if we don't have the budget or the wherewithal because of the rural nature of our county, for example, to do something like that, then we could in fact create a lever that would curtail development. And what I mean by that is we would then have to think about whether the densities that we have in some areas make sense. I mean, obviously we can't play a game of creating a whole bunch of phony density by making a rule that says, yeah, the density is there, but you can't have it.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that, and I understand that result potentially of doing that, but it seems to me what I'm trying to figure out is whether that's a path of analysis that makes any sense, whether we would have the ability to say, we don't think we ought to have this additional population or this particular density in an area unless we've got these services, which we believe to be necessary to maintain, whatever it is, public health, safety, quality of life, whatever. We could make that decision based on the vision statement and based on other general things, and that would then factor into our discussion in the land use element about densities. It would certainly take into account in not increasing densities, and perhaps would lead us to want to, have the wake-up call of needing to reduce densities in a particular space, or bite the bullet and say we need to make a bunch of additional capital developments that we have to recognize cost money, and two, may be inconsistent with our view of rural character. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to find a way into this that is more likely to keep us honest and be transparent to people. So that was my reason for my question. And what I think I heard is if we wanted to, we could recommend moving some Category B items into Category A for our purposes, even though state Category A would have required A, and then we'd be creating something like San Juan County Optional A or San Juan County Elected A or something like that. So it sounds like we could do that, but it also sounds like you had a caveat there that I didn't want to.
This is Erica. I think that you can keep it the ones as Category A and Category B, and the Category B ones are still important, and you would still consider those as part of your land use and density in the plan. That's where it would be appropriate to say, reduce or limit development on the plan level when you're looking at the Bs and the A. I hesitate on putting them into A because what that does is that leaves you with maybe you left it all that density on the map, and then when somebody comes in for a permit, you say, no, sorry, we don't have the capacity. So really, I would say you'd want to do those as like what you're talking about is rolling those things into your land use map and density discussions.
I see. Okay, so that makes sense. I mean, as I prefaced, I don't want to create a bait and switch here, but I did want to think about what we could do. All right. Okay, thanks. That answers that question. Maybe took longer than I thought it would. Sorry about that. The next comment I have, I guess page 15 is the best place to reference that, and that was there was a comment this morning that from the Friends that Lovell Pratt articulated, which I believe, and again, not having read it, was recommending that we establish, I'm not sure whether it's recommending we establish an LOS per se or some sort of targets or something with respect to recycling. I would recommend that we think about that for a number of reasons. I think there's some caution that should be had there, because if we were to come up with a general set of, let's just call them targets, because I don't know that they would really be a separate level of service that we would want to create there. if we were to create targets and put them on each uniformly and in a uniform manner on each organization that's involved in handling solid waste, that might result in duplication of effort, duplication of activity, inefficiency, lack of inter-island cooperation, which would be inconsistent with statements that we have in other policies and goals, and I think also perhaps with one of the statements in the vision statement, although that's not in front of me. So I think it makes sense to consider that. I don't know whether those comments provide any further examples or suggestions of how that might be done, but I just would highlight for the group that it's not as straightforward as saying we want to shift X percent of solid waste to recycling or something like that. It's the devil's in the details of how you'd apply it. Seems to me. So the next comment I have is at page 18, and it's really the same sort of a comment that I had before, back on that list of 9. It's essentially the same comment that I was making at the comments on 8 and 9, and that is that it seems to me that one of the things that would be done in this, it says 3 says consider the following response mechanisms when county government administrative buildings fall below established LOS standards. And it seems to me that one of the things we would be doing there, or should be doing there, is evaluating the ongoing need for the particular government service. And that's missing. Mm-hmm. So, okay. The next one I have is page 19, where we're talking about the sheriff function. One of the interesting things about San Juan County to date is that we don't have a jail, and that presents sometimes challenges for our criminal justice system. We have to make arrangements with other counties and things like that, but at the same time, we don't have a jail facility, and various externalities that come with having a jail facility in addition to the capital cost of it. I'm wondering whether we should consider a policy for comprehensive plan purposes of not having a jail.
It sounds like something that we could talk with Sheriff Krebs about. I hate to.
I mean, obviously, there's a bunch of views we would want to have, but that would be one way to, I think that's consistent with the vision statement. I think I'm not aware of it being inconsistent with anything else in the plan. It's sort of a basic assumption that a lot of people make when thinking about those sorts of issues. But I realized in reading through this first draft of the element that it's not something we've ever actually articulated before. We've acknowledged that we don't have a jail, but we haven't said anything about what we think about that. So I just wanted to highlight that as something we might at least want to think about. Maybe decide to leave it the way it is, but I also personally don't see anything in the data we have and projections we have for the planning horizon that would change that. Unless, of course, something changed in the other Washington and somebody made a big bunch of money together to enable rural counties to have jails. I'm still not sure we want one. And if you see where I'm going with that from a policy perspective. Anyway, so that's why I'm raising that suggestion. I don't know whether what else would make that comment or not.
Erica.
Yeah.
So this is Erica. So one of the things that we've recommended is taking a look at level of service for sheriff. And you will notice that our level of service does not include jail square feet per person or per capita or anything like that. So in my mind, I look at this and I think with that level of service, you're already kind of saying you haven't adopted a level of service that includes a jail, and facility. So, but I do think that what we could do is bring back some examples, because we've recommended that we take a look at that level of service standard, so we can bring some examples back from other places, and that would help with that discussion, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the actual answer is, or what the issues there are, or even what the underlying requirements are. It's my understanding that sometimes the sheriff has difficulty or has to make a decision not to hold somebody for much of a period of time at all because they don't have a facility for it. I get that. On the other hand, once you get in the jail business, well, anyway, you have those issues. So if we were going to make a decision that we didn't want to have a jail, I think we could include that in the plan if that made sense. So I think this LOS evaluation you're talking about makes sense. If there's other facilities that the sheriff thinks that it needs, which would help it better balance its budget or better address public safety issues that folks have raised for us in some of the comments we have received, then anyway, so that's my comment on that. The next one I had, there's only a few more, it was on page 21, and that is number 4 at the top of the page. This is a section related to recreational activities. It says review and revise the parks, trails, and natural areas and non-motorized transportation plan every 6 years. Who is the who in that sentence? Does this mean that this plan, which, I mean, obviously this is one of these things I keep coming back to. It's a plan that's not developed by the Planning Commission. It's a plan that in other places we say is incorporated into the comprehensive plan, and I don't think that's actually what we did in the past. I think we made reference to parts of that plan and acknowledged it existed. But, and I have a continuing problem with abdicating the Planning Commission's responsibility to other organizations to tell us what the planning policies are. So my only question about this is, who are we saying the Planning Commission will review it, or that the Parks Commission will review it, or what are we saying?
Yeah, thanks for flagging that one. I think Erica and I can take a look at this one to make sure that we're being clear about whose responsibility this is.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to raise it because that's one of those incorporated by reference issues. All right. The next one I have is page 22.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did I cut someone off?
No.
Okay, cool. On page 22, talking about schools and talking about things that could be done there if schools fall below LOS standards. One of the things that's not in here, which seems to me potentially to make sense, would be potential facility sharing. For example, libraries. In section 7.5.c, we have LOS standards for our public libraries, which are pretty fantastic, really. I mean, the libraries that we have in this county truly are fantastic. So it seems to me that if an issue for schools was libraries, there would potentially be a way to share some of those facilities, particularly when in some cases they're fairly geographically proximate. I'm not sure, but it seems to me that's something that one could consider depending on the nature of the limitation. And I understand there's other issues, but it just seems to me we ought to be considering those options as they arise. The next one I have is on page 23. I just wanted to figure out what's the source for the policy 2 under medical clinics. It says encourage private medical clinics to maintain 1993 baseline facility levels. I'm not sure I know the source of the 1993 baseline, and I guess I'm wondering what has led us to conclude that the 1993 baseline is appropriate.
Linda and I talked about, well, we were unsure of some of the sources of a lot of these standards. So I don't know where these standards come from. We thought maybe that this was what the levels were in 1993, and they just decided that that is the amount of square feet per capita that we wanted to maintain. But if it doesn't seem to be adequate, we could look into changing the ratio of square feet.
Well, I don't know whether. Yeah, I'm not criticizing the numbers. I just want to know where they came from, since we're planning for a horizon going forward, and wanted to figure out whether, if this just was historically what it was in 1993, the whole lot has changed in medical services organization and thought and those sorts of things since 1993, and particularly looking forward, a lot of things have changed as well. I mean, the advent of telehealth, those things that can be done remotely that didn't used to be able to be done remotely, outside of a hospital if the resources are available, a number of those things, that coupled with the aging and continuing aging of our population expected during the planning horizon, suggests to me that we might want to be looking at something other than just the historical numbers, at least for medical clinics. Now, whether we should be looking at something different for libraries as well, I don't know. I think right now we have already expanded the Orcas library. I do not know about the others, but I do know that their libraries are fine facilities, for example. Again, I don't know the relevance of the 1993 baseline. So those are my two comments there. I think the medical one is probably the most pertinent, but because I think the libraries are, anyway, doing very well. That's the last comment that I had on the first draft, and I didn't want to go and I didn't want to over edit, but I did want to raise those.
Okay, yeah, thanks for flagging those for us. We'll take a look at those as well. I've written a note for Eric and I.
Is there anything further on the capital facilities element from any of the commissioners? Not hearing any. We will.
Hello. This is Dale.
Dale. Thank you. Sorry about the lag time.
I was while Tim has been raising his issues and conducting a nice discussion, which I appreciated. I was back looking on page 17 of the element. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And if you take a look at page 17, we're talking about 7.3.c, the sewage treatment facilities.
Yes.
And specifically, what caught my attention, and it's just a minor, well, I don't know how minor it is, but there's a reference to down in section 7 of 7.3c, down at the bottom of page 21. It says, require service providers to develop and submit plans to the county in accordance with policy 6 in section 7.3b above. So I went to 7.3b above, and that's the one on water, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then if you look at that section, you're really referring to, I think, what should be 8. It's on the same page above it, but you're in 7.3.b, where it says number 6, require service providers to develop. You see that paragraph?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that 6 should be an 8.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so that's the minor one. The more I guess general or specific comment about substance, that's talking about water distribution facilities, and yet we're saying in paragraphs 7 below, dealing with sewage treatment facilities, that those providers should develop plans in accordance with policy 6 and 7.3b, which is a policy for water treatment centers. Why not just take that section that I've just suggested be renumbered 8 and reword it and say sewer treatment facilities, and then to follow my suggestions. And then I question: would it be appropriate to require sewer treatment facilities to reach an 85% of capacity, just like you do for water? Is that just common? Is that a good percentage to use for 2 different kinds of facilities?
I'm just reading it and thinking. One second.
Take your time.
Oh, okay. So I think that this has to do with in the old element, after reaching a certain capacity, the system provider or the service providers were supposed to act upon a few different response mechanisms that were listed, and those have been moved to like where all the formulas are in the capital facilities plan. And so 85% was the I think it was LOSC, but I'm not quite sure.
That's correct. I just checked. That's where it came from.
Okay.
So the 80. Okay.
So whatever it is for, whatever that percentage should be for sewage treatment systems that equates to that LOS is maybe what we should change it to. I don't know if it's 80%.
Yeah. Actually, 85% is what's listed in the LOS for both community water systems and community sewage treatment facilities at LOSC. That's on pages 117 and 118 of the of attachment or appendix B, attachment 2, level of service formulas and standards.
Yeah. Okay. So in effect, 85% appears to be correct, but it would seem to me more, helpful in reading a policy for sewer treatment, not to refer it back to section 8 in the previous one on water. All you got to do is, So if that's the appropriate thing. And then the question is, I know I'm just kind of new at this whole LOS language and details of it, but where do you find LOSF?
If you'd look. Oh, sorry, Sophia, I cut you off.
It's okay. What were you going to say, Tim?
I was going to say it starts in attachment 2 to appendix. Is it appendix? Which is it?
Appendix 7.
No, it's attachment 2 to attachment B. Attachment B, attachment 2, page 117, and it starts at 117 of attachment B, attachment 2, level of service formulas and standards. So that was my initial comment was about it. At least saying what the performance standard, what the LOS is in plain English in the element. And I think if we were able to put these in a footnote, it would be even better. But anyway, that's what that comment was about. So I'll be quiet at this point. I was just looking at it, so I just thought,
Right. Well, thank you, because with 117 plus pages, it's really hard to remember where everything is. And I hadn't even thought about LOSF until we got into this discussion earlier, and then here we are. So, okay, my points have been made on that section of the element. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody, Michael Pick, Steve Ruby, anybody else have any further comment on this element?
This is Mike. It's been thoroughly discussed. This is Mike. I have nothing.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, he has no further.
Oh, no further. I'm sorry.
No further comments. All my questions have been covered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hearing no further discussion, thank you very much, Sophia. And we will close that presentation and move on to the last item on our agenda, which is the presentation from Adam Zach on the miscellaneous appendices.
All right, good morning. So this is Adam Zach, as Camille mentioned. My briefing today will focus on proposed changes to 4 sections of the comprehensive plan. And these are pretty much minor changes, just kind of cleaning up some things and reformatting to match the format that we're going to be adopting on the other elements. The sections are Section C, definitions, D, administration, Appendix 2, the joint planning policies with the town of Friday Harbor, and Appendix 3, the Friday Harbor unincorporated urban growth area management agreement. As I mentioned, most of the changes are just reformatting to match the new format that we'll be adopting. The biggest change proposed is striking out, removing Section C definitions, and then putting those definitions into the introduction. So it would eliminate Section C and just put it in with that introduction and the vision that you looked at today. The current draft of the introduction didn't include those definitions, but we'll incorporate those in the subsequent draft. And then once the definitions are removed, the administration section, which was previously Section D, will get re-lettered to Section C. That section was also edited for clarity. In the administration section, there were a lot of places where the county council was referred to as the Board of County Commissioners, or the Department of Community Development was referred to by an older name of the department. So we updated all of that to get it consistent with our county code and the other parts of the comprehensive plan. And then finally, appendices 2 and 3, those aren't changing. There were no substantial changes. It was just some reformatting to get everything kind of visually compatible with the rest of the updates. The comment period on these changes was between May 11th and June 1st, and no comments were received. I haven't had a chance to look at the comments that were submitted this morning, last night by the Friends of the San Juans, but I don't think that, I'm not sure if there were any changes proposed there. So at that point, I would entertain any questions that you may have about these sections.
Kim Blanchard, do you have any questions?
I actually do have 2. They're
Okay.
very simple, and one is just one of those things that happens when you edit, and that's at page. Oh, sorry. This is in the administration sections, attachment B to your staff report.
Okay.
On page 3, and number 4, a hearing examiner. No, in accordance with state law, a hearing examiner is vested. It should be.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So that one, so I told you, very simple. The other one, not quite as simple, but involves the word simple, is back on page 1 of that same document. Policy. The policy says, this just struck me in looking at this last night. Policy says establish regulations and procedures that include incentives that are simple and straightforward to understand. I wonder whether they actually have to be simple as long as they're straightforward to understand. Because I mean, it just seems to me simple has some other connotations potentially, and I think we're really saying the same thing. So anyway.
Good point.
So I would recommend saying include incentives that are, including incentives
that are straightforward to understand and administrator or administer.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
just strike simple and.
yeah. Establish regulations and procedures that include incentives that are, yeah, there's an extra and. Include incentives, the and, we don't need either, that are straightforward. Okay, there's an extra and in there,
Mm-hmm.
I think. Anyway, that was it.
Okay.
Any further comment or questions from any of the other commissioners? Mike Pickett,
Nothing here.
Dale Roundy,
None.
and Steve Ruby.
Nope.
Do you have any further comments for them? It's at the end of your your briefing.
No, that'll do it. I know that was uncharacteristically brief, but
Well, look, can I ask one? Can I ask one other question then?
Sure.
I've convinced myself. Well, I first thought it was a problem, then I convinced myself it wasn't, and I might as well ask. On page 7 of that same document, on the administrative procedures, number 4 regarding public participation. Does this section govern public participation throughout? I mean, is it intended to be the place where all public participation stuff is talked about? And the reason I ask about that is in connection with transportation, we'd had some conversation earlier at an earlier meeting about potentially wanting to add some additional public participation elements regarding transportation projects for the purposes of avoiding the surprise of the Orcas Road project and things like that. Surprise,
Right,
you couldn't
so-
see my air quotes, but anyway, so what I'm wondering is if I need to be thinking about those as revisions to this section or as inserts or amendments to the transportation element or both. Really just a process question.
Yeah, so the intent of the administration is kind of the general administration of the plan, and so this is a general goal for public participation. If we have like a transportation specific policy in mind or something about public participation, that would go in the transportation element. So this is kind of the general establishing it for the whole plan, but then if we have specific things that relate to specific topics or elements, that would be appropriate to go in that specific element.
Thanks. Just wanted to be sure I was thinking correctly about what to be thinking about proposing. Thank you.
Sure, and public participation is an important thing, and it's one of the primary goals of the GMA is to have early and often public participation. So that's why we kind of established that at the beginning of the plan here in the administration section.
Yep, makes sense.
Great.
Thank you, Adam.
You're welcome.
For a motion to adjourn, thanks for everybody's patience as we work through this. But looking ahead, it would appear that we are going to be doing this remotely for the foreseeable future. And I'm wondering if there are comments or suggestions about how we could make this easier for everyone. Erica, I know you've mentioned there's some constraints and that's why we have been trying to use Skype.
Yeah, so we've recommended people not use the Skype add-in unless it works for them. But if you find, like at a previous meeting where you tried clicking Skype join the meeting to actually join through the Skype application, and you found that we couldn't hear you, then we think that the most effective way is just a phone call in. And remember, when you phone call in, and you're watching the live stream, to have your computer muted so there's not feedback. I'm going to plan on having our staff, we've got presentations, but also have the documents themselves up on the screen, because I think that really makes it easier for everybody to follow along, although everybody's got them at home. Being able to do like we did with the capital facilities element and scroll through that. And then we'll work on, it looks like it was the feedback this morning was a snafu on our side. And I think we'll talk to IT and see what exactly was causing that and modify our process for getting all the technology going. The rest of the folks out there can't actually see what the room looks like right now, but Camille can.
Yes. In terms of the planning, the tentative planning for the commission and the county council, what will July? I mean, Sophia mentioned a couple of things for the July 17th meeting.
Madam Chair, if I can just tell you what's on the draft agenda for now. We have 2 hearings, one on the marijuana and one on the docket. Then there's 4 briefings planned for that day already. Also, transportation, natural resource lands, other lands, and the preliminary draft of the land use and rural elements.
So
just so you know, because I know other things were mentioned.
Yes, but I will say that I think we'll be for sure having a hearing on marijuana. We will have some of the briefings. In terms of the land use element, I'm still transitioning from Linda, so I need to take a look and see where we are on that. It sounds to me like we have some discussion items, so I need to take a look at that land use element and figure out, it's there's things, there's vacation rentals, there's the rural character issue that have been brought up as discussion items. It could be that we take a look at the structure that we're looking at, sort of the outline, and get your feedback on the outline of it, and have a discussion of vacation rentals and rural character. That seems like a lot for your next meeting. My thought was that the marijuana itself is going to be a big deal. Maybe not. It sounds like folks have calmed down a bit, but it's still a hearing. We're still got technology issues. So I would love some of your feedback on how much stuff for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think that's it. So, I mean, the hearing, we'd still have to struggle through the way we did today.
Yes.
Just identifying a phone number, saying who are you, et cetera.
Yes.
Okay. Well, in terms of
Camille, this is Dale. I have
how much should be on the agenda, Tim? Tim Blanchard.
What is the question? I think if we're,
can we pile on the agenda?
Well, I mean, the hearing will be challenging for the senses, but I think it should be okay. I mean, if there's however many people there are, they are. So it won't be as personal, but I don't think that's going to be a major problem as long as the system doesn't crash. As far as moving forward with these other things, I don't know what's in the revised draft of the transportation element, because as things have evolved, I haven't reached out or tried to reach out, and haven't been in a position to do some of the behind the scenes stuff we thought we had talked some about doing with Colin on scenic road issues and addressing that sort of stuff. I have some ideas I may just put together, because if we're there, we're there. Otherwise, knowing where we are on resource lands, other lands, and preliminarily understanding what we're talking about in terms of a framework for the land use element, that's all fine and dandy too. And I could certainly, I don't know. I kept thinking things would slow down, but in my world they didn't slow down much at all. I was just, so I want to try and do something to get across what I'm thinking, what my thoughts are anyway, just as a thought driver for other comments the community may have about what we mean by rural character and protecting it. So I have an outline of that. I just haven't been able to put it all together. So I can try and do that too. I'm not even sure what the right process for getting that into the system most efficiently would be. Erica, if you've got ideas.
I think it's going to take a sort of robust discussion at the Planning Commission level, which certainly you could send it to us. I'm a little concerned that we might be trying to squish that all in at the next meeting, and it could be that we just need to. I know the transportation element is ready for briefing. Resource lands, we are working, I think we're going to be ready for briefing. We're working on a methodology for evaluating the resource lands, figuring out which ones meet the GMA requirements as still being resource lands, and it's kind of a large county-wide analysis for that, for forestry and ag. So we might be, so there's a process by which we've created a methodology that we would do the analysis using and a sample, and I think we'll be able to brief that. I have to double check before we actually go out and do the analysis. Might take a while. It's a big GIS exercise, kind of like the land capacity, but not as large of a scale. And so what's your feelings on, we could take a look at the framework and what the land use element and rural character are looking like and what we've got so far without the substantive changes in them, and then have a next meeting where we really concentrate on those issues. Would that work for the Planning Commission? I think that would probably work better, because I anticipate that there'll probably be a lot of interest in the community in that discussion as well, especially if it's dealing with vacation rental, where, how many, saturation.
Yeah.
So it'd be a plan. If the plan would be then, if we hear marijuana, we hear the 2020 docket, get a briefing on the transportation element, and the framework for land use, kind of the outline, what we've done without substantive changes to it, and then hold off at the meeting maybe in, I hate to say August, because that's a terrible time for everybody wants to be on vacation in August, for more robust, yeah, true, a more robust discussion on the substantive land use issues like vacation rentals and the rural element.
Well, we'll probably know more too about vacation rentals and the impact on tourism, et cetera.
Hopefully we will. It will be an interesting summer, won't it?
Yeah.
So.
The only this is Tim. Sorry. To me, that makes sense.
Okay.
That makes sense. I would just note though that I think that protection of rural character as contemplated by the GMA extends beyond just land use. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to have a separate element for it. I think it relates to other things that affect rural character, and one of the biggest things that does that is transportation, which is the reason why the county had incorporated the scenic roads manuals to try and keep our roads as rural as we can. And so I think that all I'm saying is I think that the concept of a rural element goes beyond the land use element.
Okay.
But anyway, so I think that what you just described makes even more sense with that in that kind of a context.
Linda?
So right now with only 5 planning commissioners, I need to know that we're going to have 3 of you for July's meeting. So is there anybody now that knows they will not be here on, I believe it's July 15th or 17th? It's right in the third Friday. 17th.
17th.
Yeah.
I may not, this is Dale, I may not be available or in July, or in August, but I hope to be available for both, but I can't give you a firm commitment today.
Right now it looks questionable. Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Ask specifically.
Okay. Tim, do you expect to
I will be there. I expect to be available for both meetings.
Mike Pickett?
Sure.
Okay. And Steve Ruby?
I should be available for both meetings.
And I expect to be as well, so that looks like 4 for sure. Okay.
This is Dale.
Go
Camille,
ahead. Yes.
I'd really like to comment on the questions about this format that we're using. And your point was we may be doing this a long time.
Yes.
I have to say that I was expecting this Skype today to be much like Zoom, in that when I have Skyped in the past, it's always been one-on-one. I've never done a group Skype. Maybe it's been around for a long time. It's the first time I've ever done it, but I was disappointed that I wasn't seeing each of the members of the commission and Linda and our speakers from the department faces talking. Is that not possible with Skype?
No, this is Erica. It is possible. Each of the participants needs to have their have a camera or have their camera on. So I happen to know that our staff that are working from their offices don't have cameras on their at their workstations. Those of us with a laptop have a camera that we can turn on and turn off, but it's up to each individual participant. And today you wouldn't have actually seen me at my laptop, which is parked in the back just in case, but I'm actually helping out someplace else in the room. But that's the issue. So each of the individuals, if they have a camera or a camera on their computer, can actually turn it on and choose to be there and talking. It adds another element of interest.
Well, for me, that would be, I don't know, maybe no one else wants it, but it seems to me, if we're going to have a public hearing, I want to see the speaker talking. I don't want to hear it. I want to see it.
Can't force.
And I don't see why I can't see it. If we're going to hold these meetings and be effective, I think we need to make these as close to, should we say, in person as we can. And with that in mind, that's a a challenge, I guess, to the system here. But the other thing is, I would personally like to be given my own tech, help from your department or whoever's in that department, so that I can make this work best, for me. And I would think maybe others are not as technically savvy as others. I consider myself not to be very savvy when it comes to this form of communication. I've never used it.
Right.
So I'd like a little help. And I'd like us collectively to be able to help each other, look at each other, see what we're saying, and the same with people who take the time to come to meetings and speak to us there, or speak to us via the same manner, meaning being able to have their voice and their face seen by the people who will be making decisions that affect their lives.
Well, we'll have to see what we can do.
Yeah,
for sure.
We will. It could be, I'm still waiting, as you're aware, and I haven't checked to see what the governor has done with the public meetings. It could be that by the time our next meeting rolls around, we're actually in phase 3 here and people can actually come to testify. So it might be different, but it's evolving. It's a moving target. He was supposed to, there should be something that's out there. I haven't checked today to see if he's made a determination on the Open Public Meetings Act. So.
Okay, well, this is my own personal reaction to that. If the governor tells me I can go, it doesn't mean I will go. You probably will not see me at a meeting for the foreseeable future, because the readings I'm doing don't tell me that it's going to be necessarily safe.
Right.
To be there, just because the governor says I can do it. Just because your county public health officer, I've been very impressed by, but in terms of the protocols that would make a public meeting that I attend comfortable is rare, is small right now. A lot of new developments are going to have to come out from the science and from public health officials before I'll be at a meeting. So
okay.
It's a little bit of a challenge, because I see people dropping out of the planning commission. I'd hate to do it, but if I can't feel that I'm being in a position to be effective and to be comfortable trying to be helpful to the people that I serve, I think I would have to withdraw from the commission.
I don't think there will be an issue of the commission is certainly allowed to participate by phone. That's certainly okay. It's a matter of how we're allowing the public to participate. So you will still be allowed to participate by phone, all of the commissioners, if that's how you would like to participate.
No, I appreciate being allowed, but I guess what I'm telling you, I may not feel that I want to do it that way.
Okay.
I mean, I thought our meetings were great meetings. I really appreciated 9 of us were there, and slowly over a period of time, fewer and fewer people were coming to meetings, me included on 1 or 2 occasions, and it's just not the same. It is not as, it's just, I give credit to the group. It's a big effort, but it hasn't been as effective as I think the public needs it to be. So I'm kind of hoping that we can get a technologically modern system set up so that we could lead the state, if not at least smaller communities, in being able to allow public meetings to be effective. So those are my comments. Thank you for letting me give them to you.
Okay.
Well, Dale, as long as we have you on, would you, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Would you like?
I would make that motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
This is Tim, second.
Thank you, Tim. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn?
Aye.
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 Everybody's heard from. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Aye.
Camille, I need you to sign some F&Rs clear back from March. Okay. Now,
Nice picture of you, Erica.
I need to do what everybody has. That was like my first day of work.
Your first day of work?